Okay, so I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. First period, you heard a lot about this today. Fourth period, we talked about it a little bit, but this is just a little bit more specific. All right, so the reading comprehension, I've explained it before, but they take a sampling of people who have never been native speakers, never been exposed to it, kind of middle America kids, and they take their average on this. They are AP students, but they take their average, and that kind of becomes the thing that they grade you against. So just know that you're going against people that are in the same boat as you are when you do the reading and listening comprehension, okay? I have a lot of faith in y'all. Y'all will do really well here. Just remember not to put your own thoughts and judgments into it. Make sure you're answering the question the way it was asked. All right? And my advice, almost every time in the reading comprehension, maybe even in the listening comprehension, at least one question you'll be able to answer just by reading the introduction. So those are important. Make sure you read them. All right, for the email that you're writing, y'all should feel pretty confident in that, and I'm going to see if I can pull up the email for you to look at. So this is the email that you were supposed to memorize several times throughout the year. Hopefully you've got that ready to go and you'll be good there. I'm going to talk about the imperfect subjunctive in a few minutes, and that will come up when we're talking about this email. You don't have to use the imperfect subjunctive here, but it's a pretty nice place to use it if you can. Just make sure that when you're doing your email that you're using the usted form, and when I say the usted form, make sure that you're also using su or suyo or whatever. Do not use tu, do not use tu, do not use tuyo, do not use ti. Okay? All of those are wrong. Make sure you're using this. Okay? So your email, I believe you've got 15 minutes to write it. You're probably going to need all that 15 minutes y'all did in class. What I would say is you're going to have another 2 minutes, right? 1 to read it, or maybe 3 minutes to read it, and then 15 minutes to write. It should say right here. Let's see. Read the information. Great. I don't have that in front of me. Hold on a second. So I know you'll have a few minutes there, but you'll just get your reading done and get that 15 minutes done. What I would say is when you've got about 3 minutes left and there will be a timer visible, then I would stop and go back and kind of answer these checklist questions. Did you use the usted form? Did you put the verb after, did you put the subject after the verb in questions? The subjunctive and the present perfect and all that stuff, you've already used it if you've followed my little template. Did you use my template correctly if you used my template? Did you check your subject-verb agreement? Most importantly, did you answer their questions? Were you on topic? And did the questions you ask stay on topic? Because that's super important. It's at least 50% of how they're going to grade you. Okay? Now, let's see. That is it for that. Actually, let's take a really quick break and talk about the imperfect subjunctive. So this is one of the last things you learn in Spanish 3, and there's 2 different ways to use imperfect subjunctive. There's actually 3, but I doubt you're going to use the other one while you're writing. You might read it. The imperfect subjunctive, the real imperfect subjunctive that we're not using here, is when you're using the subjunctive in the past tense. So that would be, he was sad that she had done that. And that would be the imperfect subjunctive. Again, you might read it, but on the AP test, you're going to be producing the imperfect subjunctive, most likely in the form of a polite request or with the C clause. And that's the whole, if I could do this, then I would do that. Okay? So for the polite request, this would go pretty well for your email. So if you wanted to add it in somewhere, like at the beginning when you're like, thank you for having written me, I would love it if I could do this, or if I could go anywhere, I would choose Spain. That's what you would do here, and that's actually still that if-then clause. Or I could say, pudiera darme, so could you please give me, or tell me, or translate for me, or help me, or whatever. And the easiest way to do that is pudiera, because you only have to memorize pudiera, and then add any infinitive after it, and it is, could you do this? Could you do that? Okay? The quisiera is the other one, and that means I would like. So, quisiera viajar a España porque Quiero conocer a los museos de Dalí y Picasso, or whatever you wanted to say. So that's the other one, and that's I would like. Okay, oh, it says it right there. So those are two that you could use. You don't have to memorize all the rules. If you want to go back to the rules, they're in my packet that I gave y'all, the grammar packet. But basically, you're going to take the preterite form of the verb, so poder. You're going to take the preterite ellos form, which would be pudieron. You're going to remove the on, and you're going to add a, as, a, amos, or on. Again, what's nice about this is that if I'm using the imperfect subjunctive and the polite request form, I'm going to be using the usted form, which ends the exact same way as the yo form. So either I would like or could you do this for me, kind sir. Okay? Now, the other way we're going to use it is with the conversation. You might be able to plug this in, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's going to be the same way to conjugate it. It's just a different time to use it. So if you can plug this in, great. If not, no big deal. Your email is already very advanced and looks very nice, okay? So moving back to what we were doing, I'm going to fill out this checklist. Fill it out. I'm just going to answer those questions. Don't forget that when you are addressing the person, estimado, estimada, estimados, it depends. How many people is it? It's going to be like estimado señor Benavides or estimada señorita Mayan or whatever, or estimados directores Guzman y Polanco or whatever. Make sure that these are matching how many people and the sex of the people you're talking to. You could possibly do like director or directora, but that would be instead of señor or señor. Okay? All right, moving on. So your email, I feel really good about. I feel like pretty much everyone, and you know who you are if you're not this person, pretty much everyone should be rocking at least a 3 on this. I got a lot of you who are going to get a 4, maybe even a 5 on this. So you're going to be carrying a really good score here. Your reading comprehension and listening comprehension, I feel like everybody's going to rock at least a 3 here. Again, native speakers, you might be on the higher end. Some of the non-natives probably in the 4 area. So you're starting out the test really strong. Now, let's talk about the persuasive essay. Y'all's essays looked good. Most of them were 3s. I had a few 2 scores, and again, I will tell you this: if you're not going to get a 2.5, you're going to get a 2 or a 3. So I tried to be difficult when I was grading you, but just make sure you're on topic here. If you have the potential, if you have the ability to do a good hook sentence, then do it. You can use Spanish 1 vocabulary and grammar to make a good hook sentence, and it's going to be worth so much more than just some fancy words that didn't do anything special. Okay, but definitely make sure you're, staying on topic. And my suggestion for you would be when you're reading this essay and looking at the data and then you hear the audio, you're going to get the sense as to how they wanted this article to go, how they wanted your persuasive essay to go. Try to stick with that vein. Don't try to go against the grain. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's kind of hard to do it. And it's just easier to convince someone of what the common group is wanting to get the point across of. I hope that makes sense. Maybe in your English test you can do something differently, but I think what your job here really is to show that you're able to understand what they're doing, and sometimes, especially if you're making some grammar mistakes, if you go against the grain, they might misinterpret that as to you not understanding what the topic was. Now, you're going to have 6 minutes of audio. You're going to have 1 or 2 minutes to read the directions. You've got 40 minutes to write, not 45. I would take 30 of those to write. Wherever you're at when those 30 minutes are up, stop, write your conclusion, skip some space if you need to, very quickly go through it, see if there's anything you can fancy up or fix because you noticed a mistake, and then spend any last few minutes you have filling in that little paragraph that you didn't get to write when you skipped from there to your conclusion. Get that conclusion in. Make sure your introduction's strong. Get whatever else you can done in the meantime, okay? There's some good slogans and lines for you to use here in this packet, and I suggest you use them. If you haven't already figured it out, anything that's got this kind of handwriting in my little Desert Island Tips page here is good for you. and you should look over that if you can. This is the way to talk about your articles. Según fuente uno, in parentheses afterwards, or F1, and then the period, right? So they said this, parentheses, period, okay? Or según la fuente auditiva, but only for that last one, that fuente tres, okay? So I feel good about your writing, your not cultural comparison, your persuasive writing. I think this will be a good one for you as well. Not as strong as your cultural comparison and your email, but still a very strong thing for you. Now, moving right along, and I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Your interpersonal conversation, this is the scariest part, right? Here's what I'll tell you. You're going to mess something up. Usually somewhere in one of the middle prompts, you're not going to understand what they're saying. First of all, read the introduction, okay? When you read the introduction, you've got a better idea of what they're talking about, and hopefully you can follow along. Now, once you've read the introduction, make sure you've got your hola amigo, ¿cómo has estado? No te he visto hace una semana. Make sure you change amigo to prima if it happens to be your prima or your hermana, and change una semana and dos días or whatever, like whatever works best. But you've got this sentence that hopefully you can do. And by the time you've said this and you start to answer the rest of the question, you'll probably run out of time. Now, don't speak too slowly, but also show emotion. You're like, hey, what's up, friend? I haven't seen you in forever. So don't be like, hola, amigo, ¿cómo has estado? No te he visto hace una semana. Sounds ridiculous, okay? Now, when you're in prompt 2 or prompt 3 or prompt 4 and you don't know what they just said, it's not going to happen all the time, by the way. It's going to happen in one of them. You know what this paper's about. You know what you just talked about. Continue on with that if you need to. At the very least, you're still basically on task, okay? So stick with that. Talk as much as you can. Do not speak English, okay? And then move on. Now, my suggestion to first period was, so when I said to use that imperfect subjunctive again, it'd be great if you could do it if I could, then I would thing on this conversation. So when you're reading through your prompts, this is Lucia wants to tell you about a volunteer trip in Costa Rica. She wants to share some news with you. So I'm going to read that, and I'm going to write a sentence for myself before it even starts. I've got, about a minute or 2 minutes to get ready for it. So I'm going to say, si pudiera, iría contigo. And that means if I could, I would go with you. Now, I've got my imperfect subjunctive following the word si, and that's easy because si backwards is is for imperfect subjunctive, and pudiera is the easy one, right? I've memorized it once, so si pudiera, and then my conditional. Here's my conditional irregular stems. You can find them on my packet. But si pudiera, iría contigo. So I've done that, and before I even hear her, maybe she's going to invite me, maybe she wouldn't. Maybe I'm just going to say, que padre que vas a Costa Rica. Si pudiera, iría contigo. Now I've just said, how cool is it that you're going to Costa Rica? I would go with you if I could. Or if she's inviting me, I'm like, sorry, I can't go. Si pudiera, iría contigo. If I could, I would. I'm sorry, I can't go. Either way, it works. So read your introduction and try to write yourself some sort of sentence like that. We had another one was they were asking me advice because their parents said blah, blah, blah. Okay, si supiera la respuesta, te la diría. La refers to the answer, but if I knew the answer, I would tell you it. Okay? Or si supiera la respuesta, te diría qué hacer. Okay? Diría is, decir is a weird one, okay? But that's just another example. So when you're reading these, Mario's one of your friends. He wants you to go to a party. That's perfect. Si pudiera, iría contigo a la fiesta, pero no puedo. Whatever. The other thing you want to get ready, look at your notes because you might have to answer negatively. If you need to answer negatively, have this bad boy ready. No, lo siento, pero no. Desafortunadamente, either no tengo dinero para ir, or tengo otras cosas que necesito hacer, or whatever. But I've already started answering negatively. It's just something I jotted down so that if that part comes up, I've got something to say. All right? So those are some examples of things that you can say in the middle of your conversation. And of course at the end, hey, nos vemos. Gracias por llamarme. Llámame pronto y que te vaya bien. I've used a subjunctive. I've used a command. This is a great one. I would memorize it. It'll be useful for you on your test. Cultural comparison we did a lot of in the classroom. I feel really strongly about it. I think y'all are going to be great. pause this screen and copy this down. This will be something good to add as well.